Delta 69 420 is clear for takeoff. Lately, my algorithm has been showing me a ton of videos of the Freewing AL37. This model is a pretty clean model of the new Boeing 737 MAX 900, and I gotta say, it looks like a blast to fly. Knowing this was a plane I wanted to have in my fleet, I bit the bullet and decided to start another project. The first thing I wanted to do was to get everything taken out of the box, that way I could get a game plan of how I wanted to put everything together and what items needed to be painted and taped off. I knew this was going to be a big airplane, but unboxing this thing made it apparent that this model was huge. I first started off by masking off the engine nacelles. I took a piece of tape and masked off everything I wanted to remain white. I then removed the electric jets from the engine nacelles. I did this just so they wouldn't get paint on them during the painting process. I did sand all of my parts with some light grit sandpaper prior to painting just to give the paint a better surface to adhere to. Once the engines were done, I moved on to the vertical stabilizer. I removed the servo and the control linkages just to keep everything clean, and then reinstalled the plastic portion to get painted. After a light sand, all these pieces were ready to paint. If you want to build an AL37 in Delta colors like mine, I'll drop a link to all the paint and building supplies I used in the description of this video. While I was waiting for these pieces to dry, we decided to move on to the fuselage. The fuselage gets shipped in two different pieces, and it comes with some foam glue to put everything together with some carbon fiber rods that you glue in. We applied the foam glue to the center section of the fuselage, glued them together, and then used a few pieces of masking tape to hold everything together while the glue set. While I was waiting for the glue to dry and the fuselage to set, I decided to start painting the horizontal stabilizer and the wings. Just like on the vertical stabilizer, I removed the servos and control linkages from the flaps and ailerons on the wings and the elevators on the horizontal stabilizer. I also removed the landing gear from the wing and masked off the landing lights to keep from painting over them. Once it was all masked off, it was back over to the painting booth, which is just a piece of cardboard on some sawhorses in my shop, but it does the job. Once the paint had dried, I was able to come in and reinstall my landing gear, as well as put the servos and the control rods in for all the control surfaces. I then reinstalled the EDFs into the nacelles and was able to mount the engine assembly to the wing by feeding the wires back through the wing and screwing the pylon to the mount on the wing. At this point, I decided to install the decal on the vertical stabilizer. You can see here I really didn't need to paint the whole thing blue, but I wanted to make sure I didn't leave any unpainted edges. I then cleaned up the leading edge with the hobby blade and trimmed the decal so the rudder had full scale deflection. Once that was done, I did a test fit on the fuselage, and I also did a test fit with the horizontal stabilizers. That all was looking pretty good, so I decided to throw a battery and a receiver in it and check to make sure that the elevator and the rudder servos were doing what they were supposed to do. You know, up, down, left, right, that sort of thing. While I had the battery and receiver in, I could also do one of the things I was looking forward to the most: dropping the nose gear. I didn't know that this model had a taxi light inside the nose gear well, but when I saw that landing gear come out and that landing light come on, I got super excited. I then decided it was time to fit both wings to the fuselage. That way I could test all the other servos, drop the landing gear, and make sure that the engines worked properly before continuing the build. Engine thrust test in 3, 2, 1. Oh, there's goats over there. Here's goats. After doing some taxi testing and some recreational goat herding, it was back into the shop to apply the rest of the decals. This is kind of where the project went sideways. You can see in this shot that the decals I got from Cali Graphics came with the bottom decal with the Delta logo on it. I attempted to install this decal, but had a problem with getting the decal to lay flat without forming ripples. So I decided to mask off the bottom, paint it, and apply the letters of the decal separately over the paint. Here's where the issue started.
Now, when I bought this plane from Ocean RC, I bought the all-white plane thinking I wouldn't have to paint the white fuselage, right? Well, apparently that was fucking stupid of me, because anytime that you apply masking or masking tape to this surface, when you remove the tape, it takes the factory-applied paint with it. It's like they used latex house paint or something. It's the dumbest thing ever. So save yourself some time. If you have any white parts, give it a nice sand, hit it with some white Rust-Oleum paint so you don't run into this issue, because it's fucking infuriating.
After we got that all sorted out, I cut out the Delta logo from the bottom decal and just applied it over the top of the paint. Now to finish this jet up, we needed to apply the rest of the decals. I'm a huge fan of Cali Graphics. Their decals really bring my models to life. After this was done, she was ready for the big reveal. Introducing the AL37 by Freewing. This plane will make all your local AMA club nerds jealous the moment it comes out of the backseat of your Honda Civic. Complete with two 70mm electric jets, this will push you beyond the speed of sound. Equipped with beacons and strobes for the ultimate hangar raves, this plane will light up your world. Retractable landing gear with a steerable taxi light so you can see the runway when taking off into the unknown. With ultra-realistic detail, showing pictures of this model to your friends will have them believing you own a real 737. The AL37 by Freewing. Welcome aboard.
All right, it is airliner day here at the Walsburg Model Airport. We're going to be testing out our Delta AL37, so hopefully that goes pretty well. And we're also going to be testing the CRJ 700 that's been 3D printed. You can see that in another video on my channel. The winds are supposed to pick up here in about an hour, so we're going to try and get some batteries in both of these and get them in the air, and hopefully they both come home safe.
I installed the battery in the plane, triple-checked the CG, and also made sure the control surfaces moved correctly on the taxi out. Once I got out to the end of the runway, there was really no going back. I spent a ton of time on this build and really wanted to come back in one piece.
Delta 69-420 is clear for takeoff.
And she's up! On the takeoff roll, I had a difficult time keeping her from driving off the runway into the dirt. I thought I had adjusted my steerable nose wheel while taxi testing, but clearly I didn't do a great job with that. I have to say this is probably the best looking, most realistic aircraft I have in my fleet. I was very surprised how fast she got off the ground. The power to weight ratio from those 70mm engines is insane. Another thing that's insane about this model is its speed. This thing has a wicked fast approach speed, even with flaps extended. I also have almost no experience flying swept-wing models at this point. In fact, the only swept-wing EDF time I have logged was in my last video where I test flew my 3D printed CRJ 700. I will say this plane is kind of difficult to fly. I would consider myself a solid intermediate pilot, and I'd say that it was at the top of my skill level. I thought the 3D printed CRJ was way easier to fly than this, and I think that that's saying something. But she looks awesome flying through the air, and I'm really happy to have her in my fleet. After flying around for about 3 minutes, I decided to bring her in a bit early in case I needed to do a go-around. I also learned that lesson on my previous video. I'm glad that I did because I felt like my approach speed was too high and I wasn't stable, so I executed a proper go-around with enough battery left for a couple more if needed. So I lined up for the runway again and put her down like a homesick brick. Yeah, the F flight attendants are going to need back surgery after that one. You can see my left wing came up just after touchdown. There was a pretty strong crosswind on this day, and I didn't have enough aileron correction upon touchdown to keep the wing from lifting. Not my best landing, but certainly not my worst. I did capture this super cool footage on my onboard camera. This video looks like you're sitting in the emergency row looking out the window. What's even cooler is if you slow it down, it looks like a realistic approach speed from a real 737, and the details I put into the wing make it fairly believable. I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, we were done flying for the day, so she was marshaled back into the chocks, the parking brake was set, we ran the shutdown check, as is tradition. All in all, this plane is one of a kind. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and I don't regret spending the money on it. It's definitely not for the beginner, but she's fun to fly, especially if you're into airliners. I would highly recommend this model to any intermediate modeler looking to add something cool and reasonably detailed to their fleet. If you like this video, hit subscribe and check out some of my other builds. Until next time, just keep the blue side up, okay?
Oh no, the illusion is shattered. It's just a bunch of dry ice and water on the floor. It wasn't actually fog.